Good afternoon and aloha, and thank you so very much for joining us on this very special day this afternoon for this exclusive event. And I'm sure some of you feel pretty drained right now or mentally, emotionally exhausted. That was a very powerful film. Try harder. You know, this episode that you watched today, you can watch it again. It'll air on Monday, Monday, May 2nd at 9 o'clock right here on PBS Hawaiʻi. Also available on demand at pbshawai'i.org. And some of the teachers may be watching, may want to be able to show that to your students or even your colleagues. Please do so. Joining me this afternoon for some Q&A, and I'm very grateful that they're all here today. Trisha Roy, a Baldwin High School educator and a Hikino teacher, longtime friend of ours at PBS Hawaiʻi. Mina Suzuki is a Baldwin High School junior and also a Hikino student. Mina, thank you for your time and sharing your thoughts. And Dr. Mestisa Gass, Mental Health America of Hawaii. Dr. Mestisa, good to see you again. And I want to jump right into the questions. And we encourage you to give us questions. And if you hear of something that piques your interest, please do ask. Let's start with you, though, Mestisa. You know, a very powerful film. And mental health of the youth today, pressures of performing, pressures of success, very real.
Absolutely. I think one of the things we have to take into context is that there were always those kind of familial pressures, the pressures within the academic setting. And then when we start to think about the last 2 years, all the things that have disrupted it, we definitely are seeing an increase in anxiety, depression, sleep-related issues, and the capacity to be able to transition smoothly into college, into the first relationships and jobs has absolutely been impacted by all the things that we've had to go through and continue to go through as we kind of retransition. So this has been historically a very difficult time for our youth. And you can already see after watching the film how much was present beforehand.
Right. And even not only in school, but at home.
Yes.
Mina, I want to ask you a couple of questions because your story is very similar to what you just witnessed. I mean, you come up from a family of educators. What are some of the other stressors and high expectations maybe that you have experienced in your lifetime?
Some of the stressors I've experienced is just the overhanging pressure above my head to do well in school, to do well in my extracurriculars, to just have like a rounded out resume so that I can get into a good college and get some type of job in STEM or accounting, some type of white collar job.
Yeah, but your family, from what I understand that you shared before, they're educators as well as your grandparents.
Yes, many of my family members are educators.
So there's added pressure there, I would imagine.
Oh, definitely. Especially like my dad works at the school I go to currently. So it's like I never can leave his embrace sort of, just because it's like he's always there and somehow like whatever I do can get back to him. So it's like I have to always achieve and be doing my best.
And performing and succeeding. You know, I want to thank Robert Pennybecker. He's our VP of Learning Initiatives. We discovered Mina through the Hikino episode that you took part in, thanks to your teacher Trisha as well. It's a very incredibly personal story, and if you don't mind, you know, we want to show that to those who are here with us today, and then dive into more questions. But here's Mina's story that you saw on Hikino.
I love you. 3 simple words, 8 letters that can be conveyed in a multitude of languages, objects, and emotions. Something that seems forbidden to say since I had never heard it growing up in my Asian household, where showing what you actually feel is taboo. For me, love was always conveyed in the forms of
study hard
and go to college.
Ever since I started school as a little 5-year-old, I thought I earned love through my accomplishments. Good job on your report card was the closest phrase to the forbidden 3 words. In order to feel loved, I became someone who lives off of what others think of me, always feeling the overwhelming desire to be number 1, piling on extracurriculars until I'm about to break, building up for a resume for college I'm not even too sure that I can handle. There's always been a disconnection between me and people because of how I perceive love. It feels as if I'm stuck behind a glass wall where I can see the people I hold close to my heart, yet I'm just an observer they won't notice until that glass cracks when I do something phenomenal. I realized the extent of how I created the illusion that people loved me when I got a boyfriend. He helped me to come to the terms that love doesn't come from what I do, but from people loving me for who I am. My built-up qualms about saying the forbidden 3 words caused me to have trouble reciprocating them back whenever my boyfriend would say them. As we continued dating, I began to see that it really wasn't such a sacred phrase that my family had painted it to seem. 2 years into our relationship, and he still teaches me things about love every day. Love comes in many forms. I'm slowly rebuilding my thoughts about what love is and how love works. Yet, I know that through time and breaking out of my glass, I'll find my meaning of I love you.
Mina, thank you very much for sharing that story. Trisha, I turn to you now because, that was an assignment that you had provided or given to the students, and you didn't tell them what to do in that instance. Mina just opened her heart. Your thoughts on what you saw when she unveiled the final product?
So when I saw it, it didn't surprise me, like watching it, I guess, because I see them on a daily basis. Like I see the students on a daily basis. From all the students that were interviewed, I have Mina and I also have Adam that I see. And I can see, like they're the type of students that try to manage and balance a whole lot of different things at one time. And they have jobs, they have extracurricular activities, and they're all trying to do this, just kind of like try harder, where they're doing this because with anticipation of trying to get into a really good college, trying to get good scholarships, and trying to really succeed, because it's going to set them up basically, right, for what they believe in and for the rest of their lives. So watching it, I empathized with them. I felt, because I really felt bad for them in a sense, because knowing that these kids are going through that stress. And a lot of times in schools, we focus on the students that are not doing well in school, but we sometimes forget about the kids who are succeeding and who are getting good grades, and forget that they're also suffering, maybe in a different way from mental health issues, where it's, the pressure of trying to do well in school and keeping up those good grades and continuing to do that.
Yeah, that's intense. We have a couple of questions already coming in. Thank you for those who are asking questions. Mina, somebody wants to know what aspects of the film do you identify with that you're currently experiencing?
The aspects of the film that I identify with were definitely taking a bunch of AP dual credit classes as the students were in the film, just to show that I am academically capable. Doing extracurriculars, I pack my life now, and it's been really stressful trying to get through this year. Like being like how there was that junior doing that those AP physics classes. Like I'm one of the only juniors who's like currently in AP Japanese, and I'm one of only 2 juniors who gets out of school early to go do all my hard classes, because I like did all of the classes I could over the summer, and now just to get all my credits so I can focus more on what I want to do next year. Those aspects.
That sounds exhausting, and I imagine just the curriculum itself. Trisha, I got to ask you. Somebody's asking, do our Hawaiʻi students have support for the college application process? How are we walking them through this? And what are the schools doing to support those who are experiencing anxiety and mental disorders?
Well, every school in Hawaii, I mean, we do have counselors on campus. And some schools do have college counselors. Here at Baldwin, we do have a college counselor that does help students with the application process and scholarship process. Mental health aspects, every school is kind of different about what they do have besides counselors. Here on our campus at Baldwin, we do have a school psychologist. Most high school campuses also have school-based behavioral specialists as well. We also have recently a complex registered nurse that joined us here on campus. And we also have, through the Maui Youth and Family Services, Aloha House drug counselor, who meets with students regularly about substance abuse. So there are support services on campuses for students.
Mestisa, maybe you can expand on that as well. And from your professional lens, are schools doing enough? Is the education system doing enough to address mental health concerns?
I think that they are working to address it. I think there's an understanding now of the importance of embedding us early on social emotional learning skills. That success is not just about academic success, but you also have to have a very high level of emotional intelligence to move into those leadership positions and to be able to manage all those stressors. And the one thing that I've been seeing that is very hopeful is that they are becoming aware of the fact that when you change like peer connectedness into competitiveness, that sometimes bullying happens, that sometimes there's a feeling of unsafety. So we have to address also issues with suicide and make sure there's suicide prevention awareness, that those things are now being embedded into curriculums to make sure that we are giving them more resiliency, self-care, and coping skills to help transition through this difficult time.
Yeah, there's a lot of pressures, even for, I remember our valedictorian used to think that he was a god. I mean, he was so smart, and he'd walk around and I could feel his anxiety. Even back then. Mina, from your perspective, what can parents do to support their child, or maybe even back off a little? I mean, what's your thoughts on that?
I think parents can definitely show that they care through just checking in on their child, making sure that they're getting through school without, feeling stressed 24/7. They can find sources for them to communicate their feelings, whether it be through therapy or even just sitting down with them and having a talk on certain days, just for their teen to let out their emotions, let out their stressors that they were feeling that day. And if parents are like the ones who in the film who were being tiger parents saying that their kid has to get into an Ivy League, I think definitely you need to make sure that your kid comes first versus their stats.
Not easy to do, Trisha.
Yeah, I know, not easy to do.
And as an educator, how do you not get cross the line? And when you see a tiger parent, and I'm sure they exist everywhere.
Oh yeah, they definitely.
How do you manage that without overstepping your boundaries?
It's hard because as teachers, we're not only trying to help, teach them and educate them in the curriculum that we have, but also trying to prepare them for after they graduate high school. So it's about, taking responsibility for certain things that they're involved in and trying to guide them, in a way in which they make good decisions for themselves, within school and with out of school. And, in my experiences teaching English and media and whatnot, there have been parents where, you see kids trying out, for example, for honors English because and they say in their, little essay, I'm doing this because my mom said I should, try out for honors English. And the motivation should really be from the student about, wanting to be better instead of having it because of their parents doing it. And there have been conversations with parents. I think as a teacher, you're right, there's a line.
Yeah.
And being a parent myself, I get it. You want your child to do well and you want them to have good grades. But then again, as an educator, I understand that we want our kids to do it themselves as well. So I don't know. If I speak to parents, it's really about just saying, hey, they're doing well. We're trying to get them to make their own decisions and, figure things out. And they have opportunities, especially if they're not doing well, like opportunities to do better.
It's about finding balance, right? I mean, developing the full student. And Mestisa, I think that's very important when it comes to mental health, is finding that balance. Then you add the added element, like these young students did at Lowell, that, stereotyping comes into play. Whether you're Asian, whether you're African American, it doesn't matter. But when it comes to race, how does that affect a child? Especially when you saw what you saw in this film today.
I think it adds another element because there starts to be these like presumptions, these expectations that aren't necessarily the fit for the child. And if the family is supporting that, if the community or the schools are supporting that, then it starts to put this capacity on the child that they have to maintain. I remember a student in the film saying, like, being an exceptional student isn't enough. And then you start to worry about, well, what does that do to self-worth and self-esteem when exceptionality is just the average at a school system? It starts to I think that's why some people will say like this was really hard to watch because you're seeing students work hard and striving and then walking away and their perception of that success is actually failure. And so we have to be extraordinarily careful about how we help empower the youth instead of disempowering them through this process.
I want to get to a very tough question that a lot of folks try to avoid when it comes to suicide, Mestisa. So hang on for a second, but I want to switch over to Mina and ask you, Mina, as an Asian American, watching this film, and then living in an Asian American family, as you shared in your Hikino story. What's the challenges of that?
I think one of the challenges of being an Asian American is definitely trying to live up to the standard that Americans set as Asians being exceptional. I think that is something that a lot of my friends also in my demographic also experience with that feeling the need to be at your best all the time. And I think that's kind of detrimental to your mental health because if you're always trying to exceed and you don't, step back to analyze like, oh my gosh, maybe my habits aren't healthy, then, you kind of follow the path I did where I can't, say no and I pack my life. So I think that's been one of the struggles of living in this kind of community.
And really, the physical side of hugging somebody and telling them I love you, and those are just everyday challenges for a lot of people as well. But in your home, it was something very different.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mestisa and Trisha, I want to ask you the same question because children's suicide is always a concern, and it's one of those taboo subjects that many years ago folks don't even talk about. In fact, in the media, we don't even report that because we don't want to have copycats or bring attention to it. I'm totally against that. Suicide rates are very real. Is it not, Mestisa, in Hawaii?
They absolutely are. If we just look at it overall for the state, someone in our state is lost to suicide about every other day. And for youth, it's the leading cause of death for fatal injuries. So it's really important for us to continue that conversation. And I think it can start to feel really overwhelming after watching something like this and talking about the difficulty of safety. But something to kind of keep in mind that really shines in Mina's film is the importance of protective factors, relationships, attachment, family, and friends. That if you just increase one of those things, you make that really strong for a student, for a youth, it protects them and is 3 times stronger than removing those stressors. So that's why we really talk about there's so much hope and intervention that could be done at every level.
Trisha, you're on the front line, and teachers are exposed. They see abuse, they see child abuse, they see children acting differently, and then the ultimate sadness is some students kill themselves. You folks should get training with that, though, don't you?
Yeah. Ironically enough, recently we are getting trained. Teachers are getting trained. Or actually, not only teachers, but the staff, entire staff, is getting trained on suicide prevention and looking for the warning signs of suicide. As a teacher, in my years of teaching, as soon as I see any flags going up where I see a student struggling or something's going on where something's different about them, I immediately will report them to a counselor, or I will, I'll call a counselor, say, hey, can you please call the student in before the end of the day? Something's going on with them. They're just not their usual self. They're either saying things or, writing something or just something out of the ordinary. And the counselors are really great with their response, of calling students in, but it's a matter of the students being open to them as well. And, actually, you'd be surprised though, how open students are if you ask them the right questions. And I think it's just kind of being really observant about it and getting to know your students really well.
That goes for parenting as well. I think listening, even for an adult, even for a husband, is a challenge. But Mina, when you talk to your mom and dad and around the kitchen table, maybe it's not even about school. If they just want to hear how your day went, does that help?
Definitely. I think, it builds the connection between parent and child, and that connection is really what can make someone's day, make a kid's day.
On the subject of suicide, and again, with all due respect to confidentiality and friendships and everything, is that a subject that you hear about in your, not your circle of friends maybe, but maybe around campus?
It definitely was kind of a topic last year. We did have a classmate who unfortunately did commit suicide. So it was really jarring to hear that when the news came out, and it kind of really rattled our class, like, oh my gosh, we never thought this would ever happen in our time as high schoolers. And I think that it was definitely very devastating to hear.
Gosh, I can imagine, Mestisa. How do you deal with it as a young person who may be one of your friends?
I think that is why, when Trisha and Mina are talking about kind of these experiences and the legislation that's been passed, what they were looking at is how important it is for the youth to be trained and the staff to be trained to have that common conversation around, like, what are we looking for that are risk factors and warning signs, what to do if we do lose someone, and we want to make sure that our students are safe, that the staff is supported. So all of those trainings have been well vetted. They have been, they're evidence-based, and they help them gain an understanding of how to provide really safe and supportive environments and how to help a community heal through these things. And I think that that's what we're talking about. We're talking about how do we have healthy educational systems that go beyond curriculum, that really start to talk about emotional success and validate the fact that it's a difficult time.
Yeah,
I think that we're also, in
yeah.
schools, we're beginning to, there's a real big push, since COVID especially, about social
Mhm.
emotional learning.
Yes.
And really talking about it and getting to know students and having that connectivity with students more, and having students connect with each other as well, because it's been tough in the past, even before the past 2 years. But I think students nowadays, I feel like they just have so much going on, a lot
Yeah.
more than before for some reason.
Oh gosh, yeah. I mean, and not even counting COVID. You throw in COVID, and that's a whole different school experience. We're going to be wrapping things up shortly, but real quickly, I wanted to hear your final thoughts. Mina, I'm going to save you for last, if you don't mind. But Doctor, maybe you can share your final thoughts on this day, this film, and this topic.
I think my final thought is just to highlight the importance of youth voice, that, we watch Mina's experience and we get to share in it, because, sometimes they bring people like me to come out and talk about, like, what are the statistics and what is happening. But the most powerful voice is the youth voice. And I think that's why we walk away from films like this and think, like, wow, we really need to start dialoguing about this and doing something, putting it into action. So as long as we can find even more platforms so they can share their experiences and what's happening, so that we can learn about it and help support them, that's what we should do.
Nicely said. It's a real wake-up call, Trisha. This film, you live it every day, but this film really highlights some of the challenges. Your final thoughts?
It's kind of going off what Mestisa said about just listening to students. I think that we have to remember that they have a voice. Sometimes I think as adults, we forget we were students too at one point, and we were teenagers at one point as well. And it's important to listen to students and, talk with them, like Mina was saying, like having conversations with our own children. If their parents, watching today, have conversations with them. Even if you ask them how their day was and they just say it was good, ask them to elaborate on it, and get that information from them. And, even we may seem like nagging parents, we should still, like, really try to get those conversations going at home.
Yeah, Mina, your final thoughts on this topic, and again, thank you for sharing your story with us. The stresses that you're dealing with, and not to mention just being a teenager, prom season coming up, etc. Your final thoughts on all of this that you saw, witness, and be a part of today.
I think after watching that film, it really opened my eyes into ensuring that adults and parents instill a sense of passion in their kids versus having them live up to the standard of excellency through grades and their extracurriculars and other things that they do. Because I know for people like me, I followed that route of take as many AP classes, college classes, do as many extracurriculars as possible. But it took me so long to figure out what I wanted to do. with my future and to find a future career, because I didn't like anything. I would do things to have backups. And if we instill this sense of passion in our youth, then I think that it opens many, many more doors versus having your children follow the route of do well in school, get a 4.0 plus GPA, do these extracurriculars.
And you're heading to hopefully where?
I hope to go to Creighton University, and I'll be a senior next year, so we'll see where that takes me.
I got one thing to share with you. Even if you choose to be an optometrist, ophthalmologist, dentist, whatever it is, you got plenty of time. And just live, enjoy prom season, homecoming games, live all of those things, Mina, because there's so much more ahead of you. You're a bright young lady, and we're very grateful that you opened your heart. Trisha, thank you very much as well for the good work that you do every day on the front line, as well as all of our teachers. And Mestisa, thank you as well for joining us. PBS will be sending out an audience survey to all of you today. We kindly ask you to maybe share your feedback on this event. We want to get better. Our team is continuing to improve on these screenings, and we want to hear from you. If you have a moment, please offer your feedback and your insight. Also on your screen, hopefully right now, you're going to be seeing a QR code. Please consider giving a gift to PBS Hawaiʻi. Thanks to viewers like you, we can continue to provide these free virtual screenings of these incredible films and programs like these. To donate, simply scan the code on your phone and it takes you directly to our donate page on our website, pbshawaii.org. And again, don't forget the broadcast premiere of the independent lens film Try Harder will be airing on Monday. That's May 2nd on PBS Hawaiʻi at 9 p.m. Tell your friends, tell your colleagues, Trisha, and Mina, even your students. And Mestisa, thank you for sharing that with your professional friends as well. It's a very important film I think we should all watch. It would also be on demand for further viewing on pbshawaii.org. You'll also be able to find a recording of this panel discussion today on our website as well. On behalf of the entire panel, on behalf of Trisha, Mina, and Dr. Mestisa, as well as our PBS Hawaiʻi team and all of us who made this possible today, we thank you for joining us, and until next time, aloha.